Welcome to the Engaged Jain Studies podcast, brought to you by Arihanta Institute. Listen to top figures in the fields of Jain studies, religious studies, vegan studies, and social justice discuss pressing issues of everyday relevance. Together, let's move beyond the realm of personal spiritual growth and connect philosophy, religion, and spirituality to the important task of caring for the well-being of society. Learn about your world and how to change it on the Engaged Jain Studies podcast.
Jai Jinendra, and welcome everyone to the Engaged Jain Studies podcast. I'm Professor Christopher Jane Miller, and today I have the great honor of interviewing my friend and colleague, Dr. Nitin Shah, who's currently in Southern California. And I'm really looking forward to interviewing you, Nitin. This has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. We're going to talk about your course, your background, and everything. So why don't you tell us, Nitin, a little bit about yourself, your background. I know you've taught before, you're a member of the Jain community, and what you're interested in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a professor of anesthesiology and critical care medicine at Loma Linda University, which is in Southern California. And that's what my whole life has been. I studied from Baroda, India, and then I was in Africa for 7.5 years. And then I moved to that other country called New York. And I say that because that's what they told me when I was moving to California. So I make a little joke of it. But based in California now, and Jain by birth and by beliefs. And I've been very interested in various compassionate activities around the world.
Wonderful. Yes. And one of the reasons that we invited you to the podcast was to be able to hear about some of this work that you do. And you do a lot of great work for compassion around the world, using and sharing your talents with others. And I know also really coordinating and energizing other people with talents to make the best use of their talents to serve humanity. So as a member of the Jain community and just as a good human being, we are so happy to have you here on the podcast. Let me ask you, maybe to start off, what does compassion mean to you, Nitin?
Now, in simple terms, it just means helping others. And that others can be stretched, as per Jain beliefs, to all living beings. I grew up watching my maternal grandfather practicing it without saying anything about how he believes in Jain principle of ahimsa, which is the main tenet of Jain, and compassion originates and more or less ends at ahimsa. Whatever we do is towards helping living beings survive, move on, etc. If you go into the literature, which I think I will mention a little bit later, there are references, and that is what he lived his life, which I was fortunate to watch very closely for 4 years of my high school years. And based on that, as I grew up, I continued to practice. And over the last 3 decades plus, I have kind of increased and intensified my activities around the world.
Wonderful. And what I really appreciate about this story is that really personal piece of it. You spoke of your grandfather, and it's bringing back memories of my grandfather, who I also could say I really looked up to for similar reasons, for the way that he extended compassion to others on a daily basis. And again, it wasn't grounded in any particular religious tradition or philosophical tradition, but there's this sort of human capacity to be compassionate that travels through all of these religious traditions. And I think one of the things that you're going to be doing soon that's really wonderful that will bring this out is you are teaching a course here at Arihanta Institute in the Compassion Studies Initiative, where you're going to do just that, is show the ways that religious traditions, the Jain tradition and other traditions, practice compassion in action. So the title of your course is interreligious approaches to compassion in action. And I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit just about the course in general. What does that mean? What are you going to be teaching us in interreligious approaches to compassion in action?
If I say it in simple terms, I'm just going to talk about my life. As I said before, moved to Los Angeles 33 years ago and kept doing that right within few months of my arrival, and have kept increasing the level of activity, types of activities, and also different places in the world, of course, being America and India leading the way. But there are 16 other countries so far that I've traveled to, and including those, there are another 25, 26 countries where, under the leadership and banner of Anekant Community Center, we have been doing compassionate activities. And, if I summarize myself about the background of this particular course, when I was growing up, and much more after I became a physician, I aspired to do things for the three main tenets of Jain religion, which are ahimsa, means nonviolence, or compassion; anikantvad, which is multiplicity of views; and aparigra, which is non-possessiveness. And I am very humble to say that I've been able to associate with three organizations which are which are affiliated with this. There is an Ahimsa Center here at Kerpoli, Pomona, that I was involved in establishing and have been a founding sponsor of it in 2004. That came right about time when I finished my presidency of Jain Center of Southern California in 2002 and 3. Then, 2005, I was fortunate to be the founding president of Anekant Community Center. Again, the word Anekant. And 2021, we established a Parigra Foundation, which is with a friend of mine and my family. So, based on these three principles, I wanted to have something which I've been fortunate to have. And Anekant Community Center and Aparigra Foundation, they are both religious tenets, and yet they are non-religious, non-profit for humanitarian activities, and have been carrying out the activities under those two organizations over last 20 plus years. And of course, the activity started in 1992 in here. But the roots of them go back to 1977, when I was a medical resident in anesthesia in Vadodara, India. And I was involved in taking care of a 22-year-old engineer in those days due to the underlying disease called Guillain-Barré syndrome. In our hospital, he would not have survived. And God made me an instrument to do something out of box. And that led him to live, not only leave the hospital and become an engineer, because he was in the second year of engineering college when he came to the hospital. So that kind of put into me about what one can do when you start thinking out of the box under the circumstances. And till to date, that hasn't stopped. Every time, just this year in 2024, which is the epic, of course, I've been to 9 countries, and if you add America, 10 countries doing missions. Normally, they are about 4 to 6 a year for last many years. But I retired, and the intent of retirement was that I go and do more. And my son had asked me for last 3 years, retire and go do more. And that's what's the essence. So in the course, Compassion in Action, I would be narrating stories of my personal life, but more importantly, I plan to give ways that you can go and practice right next day after you hear me. Of course, next day may be just a comment, but I would be showing you ways not only in the health field, but even other humanitarian work. So that is what I aspire to do in the course of Interreligious Compassion in Action.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, I can already draw the line from your experience as a child, watching your grandfather be compassionate, and then you went to medical school and you had this really profound experience with healing with a patient, with a young patient. It sounds like that was profound and had such an impact on your life and your perception of how to approach taking care for others. And I know you're in the health field, you're a doctor, and that requires, of course, quite a bit of human compassion in order to be able to really be with people who are suffering and be there for them and help them come back to their health. And part of the reason we invited you to teach this course, of course, is that we know you have all this life experience, this rich life experience, and it's grounded in your Jain tradition, but it's also in many ways, as you pointed out, also really just universal for humanity. And I can really see how the principles of ahimsa, nonviolence, anekantavad, the multiplicity of views, having this open-mindedness towards others and the way that others think, and aparigraha, non-possession, will be a good foundation for compassion in action. So we're really looking forward to your course. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just maybe briefly go through the topics you'll be teaching there to give people a sense of some of this life experience and what it is that you will be teaching them. So your class is broken down into 4 parts. And the first class is about Jain philosophy of compassion in particular. So from your own tradition, you begin. It's a very logical place to start. And it's about learning the practice of promoting good health locally and worldwide. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're planning to share with us there, grounded in Jain philosophy of compassion?
Sure, Chris. Thank you for your kind words. My first class, as it says, is Jain philosophy and good health practices. So, Lord Mahavir is the 24th Tirthankar, equivalent of gods. And he said, I'll say it in Hindi, रोगी और पीड़ितों की सेवा करता है वो धन्य है. He's humble and great, who does help people who are suffering and who have got diseases. And also, Uma Swamiji wrote in Tattvarth Sutra about compassion. I quote, the observer of vows should cultivate friendliness towards all living beings, compassion for miserable, lowly creatures. And that's going to be the principle on which we will talk in the first class. But more importantly, I will highlight and outline things that you can do primarily in the health field to start with. Say, if you want to organize free community health fair, what are the steps that you need to do right in the neighborhood that you are. And not only that, I will be available for consults and even traveling if you need to wherever you are. The objective of my course is learning is great, but being able to practice is even super. So that will be my objective in class 1 for the local community. And then if you happen to come from other parts of the world and if you want to give back, that's another topic that I will cover. What will it take to organize an international free community health fair, whichever country you are in? The fact that I believe there is need, there are pockets of people in every single country, including the most sophisticated and developed country in the world. It's a matter of finding people who have got compassion in their heart, who wants to work to go and help them, including America. As I said, we do on an average 6 to 8 free community health fairs per year for last, I would say, 20 plus years. And we go and help people wherever they are to do those things. So that's largely in class 1.
That's fantastic. And I can really see how class 1 not only allows you a chance to share from your own Jain tradition as a foundation, but also from your experience, as you say, of putting compassion in action locally and globally. And your accessibility is also a nice feature here that students will be able to reach out to you directly to discuss with you the ways that they can create some kind of local or global change depending on where they are. And as you and I know, no matter where you go, it's also a universal truth. There is suffering, and the response, I heard you give it there at the beginning of this description, the response, the spiritual response to suffering or to those who suffer is to extend compassion to those who suffer. So I can see how medical missions and humanitarian medical missions, either local or globally, could really fit well in as a spiritual practice of sorts, or even not. If people are just humanitarian in general, they can understand that compassion is the kind of universal response to those who suffer. So we're looking forward to that. And I love in your syllabus, you write, health is the best wealth that one can ever have. And that's really what you're trying to provide. And I know that in the work that you do, you're really caring for people in a way that serves their health and gives them perhaps health that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So class number 2 then extends into other traditions that I know you're also familiar with, and I know that you've also worked with people from other religious traditions in the humanitarian work that you do and in the medical missions that you do. Class 2 is called Compassion as Preached by Sikh and Buddhist Traditions, learning the plan to feed underprivileged people. And I know that you do a lot of work and have been around a lot of work of feeding people who simply don't have food to eat. You want to tell us a little bit about that and why here you're going to be bringing in the Sikh and Buddhist traditions to elaborate on this?
Yes, thank you, Chris. I certainly, when I was asked by you to talk about compassion in action, I wanted to put forth what I personally not only believe, but have observed over the years in different parts of the world. And I do believe that every religion believes in compassion. There are different ways and different practices. And I thought this course will offer me that opportunity not only to express what I have learned, but also research and add in terms of what other traditions believe and how they do things. And that was the reason. And I'm so glad that even though this is Jain-based class, you accepted and allowed me to be interreligious, because every religion has things which are important. There is no religion which does not believe in compassion. And I wish to bring practices of different traditions. In second class, we'll talk about Buddha and Sikh traditions. Buddha, of course, is very big on compassion in various forms and activities, etc. For Sikhism, there is one particular aspect that I am very impressed, and I'm fortunate that I had practical experiences of using what they do. And I will quote Guru Nanak. He invoked his father's wrath by spending all the money he was given to do business to feed people who were hungry. And this was the beginning of what is called langar, the community kitchen. And it just so happens that just last month, I happened to visit the epic place in Amritsar, the Golden Temple. And I was fortunate even to have meal in the langar. And during COVID, I was asked by United Sikh Mission locally in Southern California to help them raise funds and volunteer. And I was fortunate to raise money for them and also witness a few times to go and volunteer in their langar. They were making 3,000 to 4,000 meals every day for the people working in the hospitals. Having learned from that, we started cooking in one temple in Southern California. And since May of 2020 to July of 2023, just over 3 years, we have served 355,000 freshly cooked meals. And I will be talking a lot, including if anybody wants to do this in their own area, how to do, what will it take to do, etc., in this second class.
This is really exciting because I remember back in 2021 participating with Jaina on the mission to serve the 150,000 meals that we served in the lead up to Thanksgiving that year. And I remember that the Southern California community, including the leadership of yourself and others, Narendra Parson, was so critical to making that happen. And that happened precisely through this meal serving that you describe, and the efficiency with which you are able to serve those meals is incredible. And I can really see how the Sikh practice of langar, as you mentioned before, and of serving those in need and those who need food serves as not just a Sikh example, but it can also be practiced, of course, by anyone. But why look elsewhere when there are those who have been doing it so efficiently for so long and according to their own principles of compassion? So this is a really exciting one personally for me to see you discuss in the course. And I'm really hoping that students who are interested in feeding others who don't have, access to the nutrition and the health that they need will take inspiration from this particular one, this class 2, to learn the ins and outs of not only what drives this kind of philosophically and spiritually, but also how do you do this? How do you put this in action, right? Because it's easy to talk about these things and it's great to talk about these things, but actually doing it is another challenge. And so hearing from someone with experience of serving so many hundreds of thousands of meals to the underprivileged is such a wonderful contribution. And it's also great that it's such an interreligious contribution, looking across to other Dharma traditions. So class 3 then is going into other traditions. Compassion as preached by Christian and Islamic traditions. Learn about supporting natural disasters around the world. So we've gone from medical missions to serving food to the underprivileged, and now, of course, something that's major and increasing all around the world, natural disasters. And you're doing this from Christian and Islamic perspectives. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, as I had said before, every religion has a way of helping living beings, I would say, in some form or fashion. And I was certainly fortunate that under Anekant Community Center, we've been able to do fundraisers for 16 natural disasters in different parts of the world, and out of which few of those I personally and others have been able to travel. And I picked this specifically for Christianity because we know that they don't even wait for natural disasters. They just go and set up missions in different parts of the world. And I've been fortunate that the hospital that I worked with is a Seventh-day Adventist Christianity-based hospital, Loma Linda University. The only university that I know who serves only vegetarian food, even to their patients. And they actually don't even serve any caffeine-related items, including coffee. It's always decaffeinated. So having learned from them and personally have traveled to Haiti, Nepal, Pakistan, India, Turkey after the earthquakes, I kind of feel very fascinated about how practices have been done by Christian tradition as well as Islamic tradition. I will certainly share in this class my personal experience of Kashmir earthquake and also Turkey earthquake, where majority of the people belong to Islamic tradition. And yet, how did we get 500 people under the roof of Jain Center of Southern California in March of 2006? This was following an earthquake in October of 2005 in Kashmir, where Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan origin were involved. Of course, the major bulk I would give, for the lack of specific numbers, is 70% affected were from Pakistan side, while the 25% from Indian side. Afghanistan was not as highly affected at that time that I knew. And I even made a trip to Islamabad to visit people there and so on. So I would be talking about my experiences with natural disasters in different parts of the world. Of course, all was done under Anekant Community Center, and I would be remiss if I don't say that the board of directors have been very supportive, and some have traveled to other parts also after natural disasters. But we, under Anekant Community Center and now also Upper Igra Foundation, believe big time in helping people with natural disasters around the world. So whenever that happens, at least in Southern California, we have tried to raise funds, and not all, but many countries, we don't just send funds, but we try to see the impact of our funds. And we have done, I think, pretty significant following Turkey and Syria earthquake. And I would share what and how we did there, etc., in this third class.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, the on the ground experience of how to respond with compassion and action, I think is really, once again, what is so compelling about this class, because it will be grounded in these religious traditions, and you'll really be able to tell us how these religious traditions, in this case, Christian and Islamic traditions, thought about these things and responded to these things, and then also just how it can be done, right? Simple nuts and bolts of how you were able to help survivors of natural disasters. Fantastic work. And going into class 4 then, it's titled Compassion as Preached by Hindu and Jewish Traditions, Sacrifices of Time, Volunteering, and Money, Donations. And of course, the Hindu and Jewish traditions had a history of sacrifice that got changed around, where the external sacrifice of doing any kind of external sacrifice to get something for one's own self or one's own ego was reversed. And these traditions then had their own traditions of self-sacrifice to serve others. And I think that that's really a compelling narrative from both of those traditions that they share historically and into the present, that they both really have these traditions of service to humanity. And they do it, for example, through both time and money. Tell us about your experience with this. Tell us why these Hindu and Jewish tradition and their perspectives are so important.
Yeah, as I started out, we're going to cover all major traditions and what and how they have been practicing compassion. If you talk about Hinduism, their philosophy is also based on ahimsa, also known as karuna. And karuna in Sanskrit means to do or to make or to help. And Hindu god is Krishna, that is known very widely. And he had said about dan, and dan means the virtue of generosity. And also another term called niskam karma means your actions without expectations of any material gain or ego, and when you don't expect anything in return. That's what the Hindu philosophy is, and we will try to cover how that translates into giving of money as well as time. And Jewish tradition, if I may say, they believe in tikkun olam, which means repairing the world or mending the world, which is a very broad statement, and yet so many pieces are required to repair the world. And we do know the richness in terms of finances of Jewish community. But more importantly, I think in this class, I'm going to emphasize and discuss the value of time or volunteering and philanthropy in terms of giving donations. Both are required. And yet, how have people balanced, believed, and things like that? In 2021, I think Jain, that you had mentioned earlier, which called Federation of Jain Associations in North America, that is US and Canada, and there are 70 centers, 70, and they host convention every other year. And I've been pretty active for last several Jaina convention in one or the other committees or the board. But more importantly, in 2021, one family and trust, Soromangal Family Trust, came up with an idea of giving award based on people's time, people who have given their time. It is not by any means demeaning, and yet, if you look at the comparison, people who donate, yes, money is important and required, and yet they evaluate, write a check, and then watch. While people who volunteer, they travel, they sweat, they put in those hours, and they bring the results. I would never compare one versus other. I would just go over the importance of both. And obviously, writing a check or donating money does require resources because we all have to support ourselves, our families, and then go beyond. But volunteering or giving of your time, literally every single person can do. And we will be discussing about that in the fourth class.
This is great. And what I really like about class 4 is that, it kind of gives a very basic answer that if people want to put compassion in action, maybe they're not going to organize a big medical mission. Maybe they're not going to organize serving food. Maybe they're not going to organize a response to natural disasters, but maybe they can give their time on a regular basis or their money on a regular basis to support all these kinds of things. And that will give them an entry point as well into compassion in action. So it seems to me, as we get to the end, class 4 here, you've kind of offered an opportunity in a way for people to see how they can serve on many different levels, how they can help others and be compassionate towards others on many different levels. And another thing I really appreciate about the course, broadly speaking, is that it provides an introduction to world religions of sorts. I know that's not your main intention, but because you are going through so many of these major world traditions, world religious traditions, you're giving them an opportunity to kind of see what each of these traditions does, but specifically through the lens of compassion as a kind of universal practice. So this is just fantastic. And I think it's appropriate that you as a Jain are teaching it because, as you mentioned at the beginning, the principle of anekamtavada and being open to many different viewpoints on things, this really provides a nice prism on compassion, so to speak, shows many colors of compassion from all these great world religions. So, there's another question I just thought to ask you as you were going through all of this, Nitin, if you don't mind me asking, and if you don't want to answer, it's okay. But one of the things that seems for people who serve so much and give so much, and I'm sure you have a lot of experience with this because you do so much humanitarian work, both locally and globally all over the world, is do you have any advice for people how they could develop self-compassion, or how do you take care of yourself when you're in the midst of serving others? Is that something that comes up? Do you have any advice for our listeners?
Yes, and I would say some things because everything does take time, and we all have only 24 hours in a day. We do have to work to feed ourselves and our families and loved ones. So it is certainly important. And for that, I take it to balancing life. How do you balance different activities of life that you choose to do, which certainly could include entertainment and other aspects as well? And in all, I certainly have come to believe that your loved ones and family members do pay a price, including yourself. It's as simple as, instead of doing this podcast, you and I both could be doing many things which are for the world, which could be entertainment or watching a movie or going to a play, whatever. But we chose to do this. And that's a choice every individual makes. And it's very important that you balance your life to the best that you can. It's not easy, and yet that's very, very important. Don't forget what you need for yourself, what your loved ones need from you. And if I take you to the philosophy again, where does the word compassion comes from? It comes from the Latin word called compati. And compati means to suffer with. And in Christianity, it's also defined as the ability to understand and care for the feelings, needs, and the perspectives of others. And I would add, before others, self and others. So you must start with your loved ones and family. You can't drop them and go out, or you should not. You can, but you should not. It's very, very important, Chris, in my opinion, that service towards all living beings, and it can be in form of money or time, and yet it's, as the saying goes, charity begins at home. So it's to be focused on working on yourself, for whatever your goals are. And yet, from what I have learned, there's plenty of time in day and night for you to do other things as well. It's just a matter of finding that time and compromising some of the other worldly things that are out there. Watching a game, going out, talking with friends, partying, etc., etc. You just have to find the right balance. Easier said than done, but we certainly need to. And I will end with a quote from the Tva Sutra 5.21. It says, Paros paropa graha jivanam. That means souls render service to one another. Start with yourself, your loved ones, and then the whole world outside. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nitin Shah, for giving us your time in your very busy schedule, because I know you have a lot to do, and I know you're serving a lot of people. And I'm so happy that you made the choice with me to schedule this podcast and share your background, to share your teachings on compassion, your practical experience, perhaps most interestingly, and to tell us a little bit about the course and how it's going to weave all of these things together. We really appreciate it. Before we go, do you have any parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure. I will give you two things. One, what I personally believe about humanity. When you think, when you say, and when you do, when they are all aligned, that's what is the definition of humanity in my book. So think about your life, what you're thinking, when you're saying, and what you're doing. And finally, I mentioned before about balancing life. You know, good things and bad things happen to everybody. If somebody says it does not, either they are God or they are lying. So now the question is, how do we balance? When you are too happy with something, look at the people who are more fortunate than you. When you are too unhappy with something, look at the people who are less fortunate than you. And guess what? I can assure you there are plenty of people on both sides from where you and me both are right now. And if you have trouble finding them, contact me. Thank you, Chris.
That's wonderful advice from a wonderful instructor and human being here, Dr. Nitin Shah. Thank you for coming to the Engaged Jain Studies podcast, and we look forward to seeing you in your classroom soon. Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for listening to the Engaged Jain Studies podcast, brought to you by Arihanta Institute, an IRC 501c3 nonprofit California corporation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or better yet, tell a friend and share it with a colleague. At Arihanta Institute, we bridge ancient wisdom with contemporary living through accessible, self-paced online courses, free events, and a first-of-its-kind Master of Arts program in Engaged Jain Studies. Visit arihantainstitute.org to learn how our curriculum spanning Jain philosophy, social justice, veganism, environmental studies, and more can enrich your understanding of timeless principles in today's context. Jai Jinendra.